And the NRL is back. Just like Peter V'landys said it would be, the end of May, and we're about to kick things off tonight with a cracking contest. Who better to lead us into that than the voice of rugby league, the best and most well-known voice in rugby league in the world, Ray Warren. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show with us, Ray, and I'd like to say a very good afternoon to you.
Well, thanks, Greg. Yeah, it's great to have the game back, and it's going to, I think, relieve a lot of the frustrations that people have got that have been sitting around, either playing Scrabble or doing jigsaws or playing Monopoly. It's been something obviously none of us have ever witnessed before, but thank God it's seemingly coming to an end.
Yeah, absolutely, and what a game to resume on. More about that in a moment. I know you won't want to do this, but let's talk about Ray Warren a little bit. You said basically if you could find any job that you loved, you would never work a day in your life. Well, you found that.
Yes, I did. You're spot on. I had a dream as a young fellow, about 6 or 7 years of age. I dreamt of one day becoming like a person I was listening to on the radio called Ken Howard, a great race caller. So I set myself to become a sports commentator when I was 6 or 7, and that was just a dream. Obviously, it was never going to work out, but incredibly it did. And from the age of 23, I got to go to work, but they call it work, but it was really only playtime for me because I was doing something that I'd been doing since I was 7. That is rolling coloured marbles, different coloured marbles down a slope and calling them as racehorses. So it was a continuation of my playtime, to be honest with you.
What about the passion for rugby league? Where did that come from?
Oh, well, my brother was a very good player, and he got graded with Newtown and went on to play some first grade, along with people like John Raper and Dickie Poole and Gordon Clifford and people like that. So being a younger brother, you tend to get involved in what your elder brother is doing, and I think my nickname to him was Tag Along. So if he's playing cricket, I was playing cricket with him, and if I was playing tennis, the same, and then rugby league, the same. But he was 6 years older than me, and his aspirations were to wear the colours of Australia, I suppose, whereas mine was to become Australian commentators I'm using now. I wanted to become a Ken Howard or an Alan McGilvray or people like that. So I followed him into the police force, and it was there when I was in the early stages of a police career. I got asked, could I call rugby league, because they were desperate for a caller, and I said yes. I said I think I can. So I went over to a country town and broadcast an important football match, not having had a track trial or anything at all, no barrier trial, nothing. 90
State of Origins, a whole heap of grand finals, a stack of test matches. You've reached your Everest, really, haven't you?
Yeah, you're right, Greg. Last year they inducted me into the Rugby League Hall of Fame. They've only ever left the Hall of Fame open for players, and last year was a very humbling moment for me when they inducted me into the Hall of Fame here in Rugby League. And I walked off the stage that night a little bit teary, but I thought, well, there's nothing left for me to do. You mentioned 93 Origins and about 43 or 45 grand finals. My hometown put a statue up of me, and all of those things, you add them up, and I think I finished climbing Everest, and it won't be too long before I have to call it quits.
Well, we've loved it here in New Zealand. Let's talk about the game tonight. The Broncos versus the Eels. The Eels are on top. The Broncos, this should be one heck of a clash, not only on the field but off the field as well, because these two coaches, Seibold and Arthur, they have wonderful records, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Seibold did very well with South, as you know, and he's a product of the Bellamy Academy, of course. And they're both unbeaten sides. You've nailed it, and there's a lot of interstate rivalry anyway. But I personally think that, forget about the game for a moment. I'm very keen to see how it gets on with one referee again. I've got no fears that'll be okay. And I think you'll see a much bigger part played by the touch judges. The near side touch judge will encroach onto the field and almost replace the second or pocket referee. Then you're going to be asking yourself, how's this six again going to work? Are they going to bash it to death, or is it just going to be minimal? So I'll be sitting back watching all that, not forgetting all the other rules that came in at the start of the year, like captain's challenge and mid-air tackle and choice of scrum placement. They've all been forgotten, but we've only had them for a couple of weeks, as you know.
Gerard Sutton will be the man with the whistle, and of course we're looking at the Brisbane versus Parramatta side, or clash rather, for first try scorer. Really hard. I mean, you're a man who loves the races. You called greyhounds, I'm pretty sure. You definitely called the trots. Lining up the form of these teams when they've only played 2 games, Ray, and then they've had, a month's build-up to get ready to go again. It's difficult to find a form line, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it is, because you've got to add to that in the finals last year, just last September, in the finals, Parramatta absolutely thrashed Brisbane. It was 58-0 from memory. But the problem with Parramatta, they seem to have a problem doing things consistently, and then they went to Melbourne in week 2, and I think they got beaten by about 32-0. So they can't put 2 together. Whereas when we talk about the 2 matches they played at the start of the year, I read one newspaper said they were relatively easy games for them, but they beat Canterbury, that's true. And Canterbury on paper doesn't look like they're real strong, but it's always a tough game for anybody against Canterbury. But then they played the Titans. So I'm not getting carried away with Parramatta being on top of the competition on points for and against. They probably did beat a couple of sides that everybody would be budgeting to beat this year.
The second of the games we want to have a look at, Ray, is the Cowboys versus the Titans. The Cowboys are pretty short price favourites, and I would think they deserve to be.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, the Titans, I'm not sure where they're going, to be honest with you. I hope they survive, but they've got a history of having to withdraw from the competition. But they got Mal basically in charge now. It's just a matter of them being able to finance keeping the good young players they might have coming through. I mean, they're about to lose young Arrow. He's heading for South Sydney next year, and he's probably their best player. But no, the Cowboys, mate, again, they play their matches on their home ground. So that's an advantage, as it is for Brisbane, as it is for Parramatta. Don't forget, they've all got home ground advantage. I know there's no crowds, but that doesn't matter. I'm just making the point. The home ground, it's a very big advantage.
What about for our Warriors then, Ray, because they don't have that advantage and they've had a mixed preparation. What are your expectations around them, having played 2 games and yet to register a point?
Oh, mate, I'm like most other people. I'm just grateful for what the Warriors squad and the staff and the people around the club have done. I just think it's marvellous what they've done. It's very much a self-sacrifice, and I wish them well. But it's very much a case of pushing the proverbial up a hill for the Warriors. I see they've had a couple of players with season-ending injuries, and they've now brought in a rule that the Warriors can, in fact, borrow a player. They've borrowed a fellow from the Sydney Roosters called Farmer Seeley. He will join them as of Monday, I think it is, but he's on loan for a minimum of a month. But he's not going to solve their problems. Their problems are quite deep. And I just wish them well. Everybody will be hoping they do well. But when I say do well, if they can win a couple of games, that'll be fantastic.
Hey Ray, really appreciate you taking the time out to have a chat to us. It really is a pleasure, I can promise you that. Your book, The Voice, I think it came out maybe 3 or 4 years ago now. If people want to learn a bit more about Ray Warren, I would love to have sat here and talked to you for an hour. I'm sure we could have gone across so many of the great games that you have called. But thanks for taking the time out. I know you love having a punt. I think, where are we, Rosehill this week? You'll probably be getting stuck into the form there. But thanks again for your time. Much appreciated.
There's a horse in on Saturday I tend to like a little bit called Riva Capri. It is a New Zealander, so it's appropriate I would be tipping it on New Zealand radio. Oh,
that's fantastic, Ray. Hey, you enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of the season, and enjoy tonight's game. I know you will.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Nice to talk to you. Okay, bye.